What up, nerds? All you bebopper, hip switchers, melancholy maniacs, let's do it. Let's talk about the snakes on the plains, the lizard people. Let's do it, you nerds. Where you at? Or you can just come in and rock and roll with me. But I want to talk about the lizards, the aliens. Let's talk about the aliens, folks. Yeah. No aliens. Where they coming from? Where they're going? Where they been? No, we don't want to talk about the aliens. Nobody wants to talk to me. All right, I'm tired. I'm gonna talk anyway. Come on, you guys. Got, give it the gap, give it that. The aliens, the snakes on the plane. What did the woman see? What did the man see? Why did the man freak out? What are people seeing? What's really going on? What's spooking the people to flip out at 30,000 feet? What's going on? Does anybody know? All right, that's some damn good music. Damn good music. Does anybody know why people are flipping out in midair on airplanes? Why are people trying to get off of airplanes 30,000 feet up with no parachute? Why are they risking it all? Why are people flipping out on airplanes? Airplanes are known to be one of the safest places because, the majority of people that live within the inner city are killed by, other people. And they're killed by, car accidents. That's a big one. Car accidents. So the question is, what's really going on? I'm tired, so this is going to be sluggish. Have the aliens really come out of the woodworks? And are they casually, catching airplanes, catching taxis? There's been plenty of pictures of people with so-called extraterrestrials. We know in Zimbabwe, a spaceship landed and communicated with a whole school of children. And all the kids being, I don't know, maybe in the 4th and 5th grade, all the kids seen the aliens and they all communicated with the aliens telepathically. So that did happen because when the kids were questioned, all of the kids had the same answers. They all said the same stories. They described the same creatures. And there was, very little variation. But of course, they're still kids. But even if they were adults, but there was very little variation. So, how did all these kids just come up with the story? They didn't. It really happened. And they experienced something that is, outer worldly, but it isn't really outer worldly, it's inner worldly. Aliens aren't coming to Earth, they're from Earth. Let's get this right. We know that our history books have lied to us. We know that they tell us about Adam and Eve, and although there is truth to Adam and Eve's story, but they weren't the first man and woman. We know there's been people here for millions of years. We also know that the earth is a closed system. There's a firmament above our heads, according to the Bible. We cannot go to Mars, the moon, the sun, and all that other stuff. We cannot do these things. We know that there are pyramids all over the globe. They were all built by the same people. And we know when the earth was a Pangea, one particular um, race spread out on every single continent. And that's why all of the writings and scribes and buildings, they all look alike, because the same people built all of these buildings and all this stuff before the earth split up and was a Pangea. We also know that civilization has had several resets. So we know there is a greater power, and I'm not just talking about God. Of course, there's God, there's Jesus, there's, but there is a greater power, and that, and we are not the dominant species on this planet. We're just not. I'm sorry, we're not. And the European man, those who are in charge, so to speak, they really know this. They know we're not the dominant species. But, they are in positions of power, but they know human beings are not the dominant species. So it's not about what color race, it's about the human race. Uh, so even the people who from India, thousands of years ago, they had described the different races and the different animals and the different bugs and different species of bugs and species of people, and the people who lived in the water, the Naga, and people who lived in the mountains, this, that, and the third. But they described all of these races of people because they were familiar with them. So people are now, especially in some parts of Africa, they are saying, "Hey, listen, we can't go swim in these waters because there are mermaids in there." The thing about them is they're not women, they are men. They have faces of men, they have bodies of fish, and they're stopping us from actually working. um Now I think this was in Zimbabwe, I think. But the African men who were working on a dam, they put on their suits and they jumped into the water, went down to go work on the dam, and all of a sudden they were attacked by these mermen. And they came back up in a fright. And people thought the guy was just like, "Now you're crazy." Another African went down, saw the same thing, came up. The people who actually owned the whole um, operation were white people, so they were like, "You guys are lazy. You guys just don't want to work." So they donned the outfit, went down there, came back up, and said, "I'm not going down there again." So it wasn't black people being lazy, as they always think black people are lazy. It's not true. It's the simple fact that they were being attacked by mermen. And there's several stories of this, and people know there are some places in the African on the African continent where you cannot go into the water. There's also dinosaurs that live there. A plesiosaur, I think, lives in the loch. They call it the Loch Ness Monster. And I forget what type of dinosaur lives in Africa, but it's the one with the long neck. It's not a brontosaurus though, but it looks like it. But it's aquatic. So nonetheless, we're seeing these species that are popping up, and there are more places that are haunted. there are more people who are experiencing extraterrestrial, you know, demons and things along that line. And there are more people who are actually seeing frogmen. They're seeing I call them lupins, but they're huge wolves that are they're actually they're these beings that look like wolves, but they look more like a werewolf would look basically. But these creatures are, 8 feet tall, and they have pictures of them, they have videos of them. They're black fur covered, but they think that there's some mix of man and wolf, and because these creatures can stand upright. Most dogs don't do that, even though they can, but they're standing upright, as if they're bipedal, but they're not bipedal, they're quadrupedal, but they're walking bipedal. And this one woman saw one of these creatures and shot it. And what up, man? And when she shot it, the thing just looked at her and then growled at her and went in the woods. But it stepped out first after she hit it, and then it stepped out and was looking at her like, don't do that again, and then stepped into the woods. So these are very intelligent creatures. Thanks for the like. Whatever they are, a lot of park rangers are talking about these things. One ranger said one of these creatures, these wolf, dog, men, whatever they are, was chasing a deer, and he saw it come out of the brush. And when he saw the deer come out of, or the elk is what he said, he saw the elk come out of the brush doing time. And then he saw this, huge wolf-like creature come out of the brush doing time, but it was running on it like it was bipedal once again, like we are. It was running like we do. And then it stopped and it looked at him broad daylight, and then it turned its head and then ran after the deer. Tone might be a creature. Not sure what that means, but it ran after this deer, and this deer was clocking 40 miles an hour, and this thing was right on its ass. So whatever they are, they're faster than us, they're stronger than us. And the more we grow and tear down their homes, the more they're going to come out and attack us, pretty much. There's a lot more people who are being eaten by feral animals, and this is because we keep spreading and tearing down their habitats. They have nowhere to go. So, coyotes that don't usually eat people, they're starting to eat people. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but one young lady was a singer, small time singer, and she decided to go walking in one of these trails, and these two coyotes had passed this other couple. It was a popular trail. This other couple seen the coyotes. They didn't think nothing of the coyotes. And the coyotes passed them, and then boom, the girl was, I don't know how far she was behind them, but they attacked her, dragged her off somewhere, and the girl tried to fight them back. She had a knife, but the knife, it just isn't going to do too well against two very large coyotes, actually. So that's not natural either to see this. But these people who are on this airplane, this woman, she said that person is not real. That's what she said. She said, I don't know about y'all, but that MFer back there isn't real. Now, she could have been tripping balls. We don't know. However, as somebody who has experience with the paranormal and the macabre, I'm going to go ahead and give this woman the benefit of the doubt, because she didn't seem intoxicated, inebriated, and out of her damn mind. She looked like she saw something she shouldn't have. Now, I have seen ghosts before. I've seen one pop right up out of a wall. I mean, right in front of me, lights on, everything. I'm talking to somebody on the phone. This thing just came right out of the wall, and I got the hell out of there. So I've had some experience, Tone. As fast as the speed, more powerful. No, I'm not. Not with my patella tendon. So yeah, I saw one come right out of a wall. I'm talking to somebody on the phone, and it looked like a person. But I had the light on kind of like this, and it was in the old apartment I lived in, apartment building, and I just looked at it, and it came out, and it was facing that way, but it knew I was there, and it just stepped right out of the wall, just black figure, and stood right in front of me, and I'm looking at it, and it's facing this way, and it did not have a glow. It was dark. It wasn't a like white, that type of thing. No, it was more like a shadow. And it was just very interesting because I was so afraid that I drove 5 miles to this woman's house, and she looked at me and she said, "You look like you saw a ghost," and I didn't even tell her what had happened. And I told her, I said, "I did. I saw a ghost. My skin was completely flushed like Scooby Doo, and they turned white. That actually happened to me." I've also had experience right here in this house where me and a young lady was sitting here, and all of a sudden we heard her son's voice, but her son wasn't here. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she left. She's never been back to my house since then. We both heard her son call her, and whatever it was said "mom" very clearly in his voice. It mimicked her child's voice, and her kid was like 11 years old. So yeah, we heard it very, very clearly, inaudible, right beside us. I've also, I mean, I was doing this one lady's her floors in this apartment that she was about to rent out. And I was doing her floors. And when I walked in there, I felt the spirit, but I needed some money. So I was just ignoring it. And then I started praying, and I had to do 6 floors. And, every time I went in there, I just pray and pray. And I knew something was there, but I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. And it was scaring the hell out of me. And the last floor I had to do was the living room, and the door was right there. And I'm doing the floors, and I'm praying, and this thing is it's right in front of me. I can't see it, but I can feel it. I'm scared. I'm praying to Jesus and much as I can. And then finally it just got too much. I wouldn't even finish. And I said, Lord, if you want me to leave, give me a sign. And all of the lights in the place went out all at once. Every single light went out at once. Bang. I turned around and ran up out of there. I left the equipment there that I was renting. I didn't pick up anything, and I never went back to that place. So I have some experience, all my life with these type of things. And no, it's the truth. So do you look for paranormal activity? I mean, I experience it all the time. So when I see a video of somebody who's freaking out, I don't go, "Oh, they're just crazy." I say, "What happened?" Because some people do stuff for clout, but when you got somebody in tears like that, and she's like, "I don't care what any of you guys say, that lady wasn't doing anything for clout. That lady was for real. She was afraid of something. She saw something. And when she said it wasn't real, she said, that guy back there is not real." Listen, we seen the video of the Hispanic family here in America that the UFO landed in their backyard pretty much. And the police saw it going over their head. And they got a call, said, "Hey, these guys say something's in their backyard." And there was these two 10-foot creatures in their backyard. And nobody really wanted to believe it until the next day the video came out showing the 10-foot creatures crouched down. They didn't know there was a camera looking right at them. And you could clearly see that these are 10-foot gray creatures with huge bodies, huge heads, bipedal. And yeah, so, these guys, they weren't lying. I mean, they were scared to death. The whole family was looking at these things and they was like, what is that? And when the cops showed up, the cops was like, they told the cops, listen, something's back there and we don't know what it is. And we're afraid. Listen, one of the guys had a gun in his hand and he didn't even want to go back there with his weapon. So it is very, I believe it's very real. I thought Young Thug was alien when I seen him in person. I never seen him in person, but you know, he different. He very different. But nonetheless, so here's what I'm saying. I think that all of the people who haven't seen any aliens, who haven't seen any who's never had a paranormal experience, I think you're going to start seeing uh not only are you going to start seeing it, you're going to see it all the time. It's going to be very, very in your face. And I don't think anyone is going to say it's just not real. Because I think everyone is going to go, okay, that right there is convincing. I'm already convinced because I've seen enough. And here's the thing: once again, these aliens aren't coming to Earth; they're from Earth. And that's the thing: is where are they coming from? Because they're not coming from outer space. Now, some people say they're dimension jumpers, and that's true. They could be jumping from one dimension to another, but nonetheless, they're not flying from outer space and all this other gibberish because they can't do that. Just stay prayed up. Well, prayer is one thing, but the Bible talks about aliens too. So I think that, of course, prayer helps when it comes to, demons and stuff like that. Uh, but when it comes to aliens, it, I don't, I don't, I don't think that we can say because something is humanoid. Do I think? No, I do not. It can't. It couldn't have taken place. It's impossible for it to have taken place. So I don't think that every single alien or something that doesn't look like us is going to be evil. I think there are different races of creatures that that have gone, their own way and done their own thing somewhere else. And I think that the reality of the day is we're just not alone. And I think we're going to see some 10-foot, 12-foot creatures walking around. And it's not going to be, oh my God, this thing is coming to eat everything. It's probably going to be a herbivore. It's probably going to be a grass eating, 6-legged, 5-armed teddy bear, and we're going to be afraid of it because it doesn't look like us. Now, it's probably going to have the strength of 30 people, so it needs respect. But nonetheless, it probably ain't going to want nothing to do with us. It's probably going to be way more intelligent than we are, but we're going to fear it anyway. And then on the flip side, there's going to be something like that will attack us and will eat us because we are in the billions. So if there is something that eats meat, why wouldn't it attack us and eat us? That's what we are. We're meat and water. So it would just make sense. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's going to be plenty of these creatures that are going to come out of woodwork, and it's going to be a Men in Black thing. They're just going to be minding their business, and they're going to be slimy. They're going to be misshapen. They're just going to be different, but you're not going to be able to walk up and touch some of these things because it might be poisonous to your skin. But nonetheless, I mean, it still doesn't want anything to do with you. It may be poisonous or deadly if you mess with it, but other than that, it ain't gonna want nothing to do with you. Well, I think that okay, so I don't think Jesus came down here in the form of man and only spoke to us. I just don't believe it. I don't believe that Jesus came down and separated every creature and all the humanoids that are out there and said, only you will make it into this place. I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a few reasons. One, even the angels don't look like what we depict them as. They're not white people with blonde hair, looking like something out of, the Norse gods imaginary. They don't look like that. They are different shapes. They're huge. They're very listen, in the Bible, every time somebody saw an angel, they were afraid of it. The angels changed their form to look at us just to be able to talk to Lot. They looked like men when Lot was talking to them, and then they turned around and blinded all those people that were at the front door. They were clearly angels. Clearly. They're the ones who called down the fire and burned Sodom and Gomorrah. But they were clearly angels. But every time somebody has seen an angel in the Bible, they were afraid. Why? Why? Why are you afraid of something that's there for your benefit? The truth is because it doesn't look like us. That's the truth. They don't look like us. They don't look look, there are things out there that are so colossal and so unimaginary that we would be completely afraid to look at it, and we would ignore the message God has given us because of what's talking to us. We'd be like, yeah, okay, don't look at girls, don't look at women and, lusting them. But what is that? Can you explain this to me? When God talks to people, he talks in a small, still voice. Imagine if God actually talked in his regular voice. You'd blow your damn head off. You know what I mean? So we got to understand there are beings out there that are beyond our imagination. They're just so far out there that it's just, I mean, come on, we're talking about fourth dimensional beings. We're talking about creatures that walk through walls like it's nothing. You can't pick up a nickel nine and blow one of these things away. It's just not going to happen. And the only way to combat with any of these creatures is to go through the spiritual channel that God is giving you. We're talking about something that could manifest itself in your house and then boom, be on another, continent in a second. We have nothing for this at all except prayer. So for there to be these creatures that are out there and these beings that are in the world, we can't sit up here and think, oh, only humans are, running around on this planet, and then everything else is just, plants and animals, and we pretty much recognize every species that there is, even though we don't know every variation of that species. There are 800 different types of tarantulas that are named. There are another 800 different tarantulas that are not named. There are two tarantulas that look identical. One is poison and the other one is not. You understand that? And that's just one species. And that's just one variation of the species. It's not 800 different types of an arachnid. It's 800 different types of one type of an arachnid. And that's that we know of. You see what I mean? That's that we know of. So like we're still fumbling around in the dark, but as our curiosity is getting to us, and as we build more machines, and we're not crawling around on all fours anymore, and we're starting to look up and out and venture out and dig deep and all this other stuff that we're doing, we're running into things that are unexplainable. Mel's hole is unexplainable. They put they put an animal down into Mel's hole. It died, and then a creature came back up and started talking to people. Go look it up on YouTube and look up the story of Mel's hole. Just look it up. They tied fishing string together because they want to know how far it goes down. It was going down like 9-10 miles. But they found out that whatever goes down there dies, and then something else comes back up out of there. Eventually, the government took over. It took over Mel's whole house, told him, get off this land. He's like, it's my land. They're like, listen, we're going to say that you were a drug dealer and something's going to happen to you, so you might as well go. He had to leave. But just listen to the whole story of Mel's hole. You think that's the only one? There's a church. There's a church that is built upon, and nobody goes to this church. It's on top of a hill. And the reason why nobody goes to this church is because it's supposed to be a gateway into hell. It was built to stop whatever is down there from coming back up. You think that's an accident? You think those people spend all their time building this church to stop whatever creatures these are? No, it's happened. They know it's there. And they said, we have to build something to stop these creatures from coming into our world. It's really a thing. So there are all kind of gateways into this planet, and a lot of them come through the stuff that we have. I think many of the WWF wrestlers are fake? Yeah, I don't watch wrestling. It's entertaining, but it's fake. We started a star linebacker in high school was not normal tone because this dude was putting people on stretchers as a sophomore. Well, he was just extraordinary. We had a guy like that too. Oh, Alien. Yeah, you thought the wrestlers were Alien, but it could be. But here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying, Hardaway. I'm saying that they are not hiding anymore. Okay, so you're speculating that Andre the Giant was a lizard man. I'm telling you that the next Andre the Giant will be a lizard man. And he will come out as the lizard man, and he will be 100% a lizard man, and nobody's going to want to shoot it because they're going to be like, we know these guys exist. And everybody's going to want to see the lizard man fight against the Aurochs. You don't know what an Aurochs is, look it up. But I'm telling you, it's going to be species wrestling against each other that are not human. Because they would crush us. And 8 feet is really not that tall. It's not compared to what we actually used to be. So, you know what I'm saying? And then the more these creatures come out the woodworks, the more of them that migrate into our society and we get used to them, the more of them that communicate with us. And, we might have a war. Yeah, there might be a war. We might have to go to war with some of them because they might come and say, hey, we're going to eat you. And we're like, no, we're going to put a bullet in you if you try to. There might be some lives lost. Some people get slaughtered. But as soon as you start eating kids and we see this, you're going to get your head blown off. So, yeah, there might be a war that we, have to go through. But eventually, Godzilla versus King Kong is going to come to life. Listen, okay, so, all right, Now, I think you're being facetious, but I'm not really sure. But let's look at Godzilla and King Kong. And when you look at Matthew Broderick's Godzilla, you looked at when you looked at that movie, if you looked at it in a scientific way, and then look at what we've done to the ocean, Matthew Broderick's Godzilla is not far-fetched at all. And one thing that they showed, the reason how Godzilla became to be, uh, is they aren't making these movies. This is true because they said there were nuclear bomb testings, right? In wherever, Nevada or whatever. And what happened is it affected the land. So the worms grew bigger, the birds grew bigger, and the lizards grew bigger because they were what? Nuclear powered. Now let's look at Madagascar. I don't know if any of you have ever seen the animals that are on Madagascar, prehistoric and nowadays, but there are worms on Madagascar that are larger than you, and they can consume you. There are also snails, you know, them little creepy, there's snails that are like this big. They actually eat these worms and they pull them right up out of the ground. These worms are like this thick. They're huge. I mean, they're huge ass worms. One guy had one over his shoulder. Now, worms don't usually eat us, but they, you know, if you're dead, you know, they're part of the system that gets rid of people. But nonetheless, what I'm saying is there are, in that movie, I looked at it and said, well, there are actually worms that are that big and bigger. And so to say that a gecko, you know, got too close to a nuclear blast or start eating, listen where I'm going, and start eating food that was nuclear powered and then went in the ocean and decided to live and can live on land and water, that's not far-fetched to me. We know that there is a creature called the Leviathan. We all know this. This is a great sea creature. We know it lives there. We know it because the Bible said it's there. And we don't think it's a whale because the Bible said what a whale was. Jonah got swallowed by a whale. He didn't get swallowed by a Leviathan. It also says in the Bible, if you bother the Leviathan, you won't do it again. Meaning it will kill you. This is a huge aquatic creature. So the Godzilla is not a, you know, something I look at and go, it's just not. No, I believe the Kraken is a real creature, 100%. Now, as far as a large bipedal gorilla or anything like that, 100% I believe it could. Listen, a silverback is huge, but now they're finding chimpanzees that are called lion killers. A chimpanzee is usually what? Half the size of a man? Half the size of a woman, actually. Chimpanzee, even though they're what, 4 times our strength, half the size of a woman. No, there are chimpanzees that are 6 foot tall, and they're chimpanzees. They're called lion killers. They can track down a cheetah and eat it. Now, they can't run as fast as a cheetah, but they can eat a leopard. And when you're looking at a chimpanzee eating a leopard, you got to think a leopard hunts caiman crocodiles, hunts the smaller ones, the mid-sized ones. There are caimans that a leopard will not eat. But nonetheless, the leopard kills the caiman crocodile by puncturing its skull. It bites down on its skull and punctures his skull. That's how it kills a caiman crocodile. Then it eats it. You're talking about a monkey that can eat one of those at 6 feet. You realize how strong you have to be to do that? A 6-foot chimp. Listen, they have pictures of thunderbirds, these huge birds that have the wingspan of a Cessna. So I believe all of that stuff when I see it on I believe it 100%. When I see it in movies, I'm just like, that creature exists somewhere. Listen, I think that every creature imaginable exists. Every single one. I think aliens exist. 100%. There's no doubt in my mind that aliens exist. There's just no doubt. The way that creature moves, the way it looks, there's no doubt in my mind that that is a real creature. Now, where it's at, I don't know, but I believe it exists. Tone Wilt Chamberlain was 7'2", running. Listen, when Wilt Chamberlain was 17 years old, his relatives needed their car fixed. They needed the tire changed. And Wilt Chamberlain said, "Don't even jack the car up. I'll go ahead and lift it." He lifted the side of the car. Wilt Chamberlain is extraordinary. So, what I'm saying is, I think the new normal, is going to be people sitting beside lizard people on airplanes, and that lizard person is going to look at you and you're going to look at it, and it's going to already know you have a million questions, and it's going to start, I mean, if it wants to talk to you, it will. Hell, if it wants to eat you, it can. But I think they're going to be intelligent enough to know that if you start eating humans, on a large scale, then you're going to have to deal with rednecks, and you don't want none of that. There's going to be a lot of you who are going to die if you do that. So, and I just think it's just going to be a regular thing. And I think the world needs to brace yourself for because you're going to see creatures that are green, gray, purple, orange. The Naga. I think the Naga are going to walk right up out the ocean. I think it's going to be a hot day in Florida, and the Naga are going to come right up on shore because there's too many stories of mermaids. We have the recent story where one of the mermaids said, "Jump in the water," told one of the sailors to jump in. And they were swimming beside the boat, and this was a black guy who was filming this. You know how we are. We don't believe none of that stuff, but he saw it and he heard these mermaids. He's looking right at one. So, and that's another thing. Black people, a lot of stuff we don't want to believe, but a lot of these reports are coming from Black people. These reports are coming from Hispanic people. This is not just white people in tinfoil hats who are saying these things. They're coming from people who usually don't buy into any of that. They don't want to hear none of this. Old Black men, we don't want to hear no. We're like, no, I saw it. I saw it. It said, "Get out of the water." So because of this, I think our reality is about to change. And yeah, he lifted the car. Wilt Chamberlain is ridiculously strong. And he's crazy fast. He's crazy fast. He has a great 40 time. Remember that episode, Saved by the Bell? I didn't watch Saved by the Bell too much. Dustin Diamond, Screech, yeah, was an alien. I think there was some truth to that. He ended up being a porn star. I think he's dead now. That episode, looking back at it. Well, we know Hollywood is immersed in nonfiction. We know Hollywood loves to tell us the truth, and they love to do it in film and keep us in a false state of reality. They love to give us stories of War of the World. War of the World, Alfred Hitchcock, when he released that, listen, that story actually wasn't even for the movies. Actually, that story was for radio. When Alfred Hitchcock released it, there wasn't a thing as a TV. He released it on, there was TV, but he released it on the radio. And everybody thought it was real, and everybody started freaking out. Turns out it wasn't real. But then now you're going, well, wait a minute. We have CERN, and the Berenstein's Bears is the Berenstein's Bears, and things are being flipped on its head. We're like, our realities are starting to do some weird stuff, and we're like, what, what I'm saying? Talk about his life. I don't know too much about Alfred Hitchcock other than he was a great storyteller. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I used to watch the yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I enjoyed his stories. I really, 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 really enjoyed his black and whites. Um and they were always entertaining. They were always, yeah, the Twilight Zone, next on the Twilight Zone. They were always interesting because you couldn't help think, do we have time jockeys? Was somebody holding an iPhone at a Mike Tyson fight? Did that really happen back in 90 whatever? Or what I'm saying? Did that really happen? In the 80s, did that really, So there's, do we have time jockeys? I think we do. Is there more than one dimension? Absolutely. There's more than one heaven. We know this. We know that there is more than one heaven. We know that God is at the very top one, but we know there are different heavens. So are there different worlds? 100%. How many are there? I don't know, but I think that there are millions of different worlds out there, even more than that. Because every time you dream, you can, you know what? Every time you dream, and you're in this dream, you're in a reality. What world are you on when you go to these dreams? So one time, thanks for the like. One time I had a dream. It was about maybe 2 years ago. And I dreamed of this girl. I was outside of my apartment here, sitting on the steps. It was summertime. And while I was sitting on the steps, this girl came over. She was about maybe 12 years old, pretty dark skinned girl, and her family had just moved in. And she just started talking to me, and she came and she sat down on the steps, and she wasn't too happy. She was just kind of curious about what life is like around here. And I was just talking to her, but she had on a dress that was uh it looked like Starry Night, the painting Starry Night, except it was black, and the swirls looked like the Milky Way swirls. They were like red, blue, white. It was a very pretty dress. And I couldn't help but look at the girl's dress, and she's just a beautiful, young lady. And I'm looking at her, and she's talking to me, and I'm discussing stuff, and I'm watching her parents move in and what else, and she's just chilling out. So I was like, okay, that happened. Why the very next day I go to the store, I walk to the store. This is right up the street here, the 7-Eleven or whatever it is. I walk in the store. Lo and behold, there is a pretty dark skinned woman around 22, 23, had on the same exact dress. I've never seen this girl before. It gets even crazier. I looked at her and I said, I just had a dream about a woman, about a girl who had that dress on. She was like, really? And, she wasn't even like offended. She was just kind of like, cooling. I go home, right? And I think I drove there. So I drive home, right? I go home. I'm sitting outside of my house. Why did that same woman walk right past my house and go into my neighbor's door? How's that possible? How did I know that a dark skinned woman, female, was going to be at my house or by my house in that very same dress? I never seen that girl or that dress again. I don't know how to explain that. I really don't. It was trippy. And I listen 2 years, and I still can't figure out What was the purpose of that dream? And why was it a 12-year-old girl that I seen and not a full grown woman? I mean, they both had the same complexion, they both had the same hairstyle. It was amazing. It was amazing. The only difference is, for one, she was older and I think she had on glasses, but she was beautiful. She was beautiful. So, I know something out there is going on. I just don't know exactly what it is. But there are some of you who've had dreams like this before. You dreamt something, you woke up, and then boom, it happened. Or you spoke to somebody, and then boom, you woke up, and then you see the same person. You're like, I've never seen this person before. Next thing you know, they're standing right in front of you. Can you say that um, something has given you this message? Someone has given you this message? Did you jump through time? What happened? How did this happen? And how can it happen again? How can you can you control this phenomenon? Like, can I go to sleep and control my dream and look into the future and know what's going to happen the very next day? Can I dream of a car accident that my neighbor's going to get into as soon as they pull out at 8:30, and then I see my neighbor get ready to get in the car. It's almost 8:30, and I prolong a conversation until and they're trying to go. I'm like, nah, let me talk to you for a minute. And I don't tell them why. I just prolong it. They're like, man, I really gotta go. I'm like, listen. And I stall them until 8:31, and then whatever car is coming down the street runs into a pole. Like, can we do this? Can anybody do this? To me, the answer is yes. I used to have, well, I still do. I used to have nightmares, lucid nightmares. And it got to the point where I would dream inside of a dream, and I knew I was dreaming because of what my surroundings were. I knew what I was seeing wasn't here. And I go, I know this is a dream. And then the minute I acknowledged that it was a dream, I would come out of that dream, but I would still be in another dream. Did I go to two different dimensions? I would wake up and I'd still be dreaming. And then I would say, wake up. And I'd wake up and I'm here. Where did my spirit go? It's very possible I jumped two different dimensions. Now the question is, can I do it on purpose? Or do I need something to take me from those dreams? And who is taking me from one dream to another? Who's escorting me from one dimension to another? Who's the escort? You like to go, well, God is the escort. Absolutely, but somebody there's some servant of his going, hey, I need you to go to XYZ world and look at this. I mean, is it the Holy Spirit? Is it the angels? Or I mean, who is it that's showing me heaven and hell? Who is it that's showing me these worlds? I went to a world that was nothing but water. Also went to another world that had no land, that was stationary. It was all in the sky. And it had constant tornadoes. But the tornadoes were so regular that these twisters weren't huge or nothing like that, but there were constant tornadoes. But people lived on chunks of land, but the land floated. We lived on chunks of land that floated, and we used bridges to get from one place to another and other apparatuses. And that's how we lived. We'd be able to go from one chunk of land to the other And we lived, that's how we lived. And our land would just be floating in midair. And if you fell off of it, you just kept falling. I've seen this place. I've seen the place that's nothing but water. There's nothing but ocean. There's no land on this world. It's nothing but ocean. I've seen so many things, and I'm like, so there's just no doubt in my mind that lizard people are here. They've been here. They're always going to be here. There are statues of women mating with Naga people. Excuse me, they're not Naga. Naga people are water people, but reptilian snake people. So their body is of snakes, but their torso is of man, and they have arms. And women have fallen in love with them and mated with them. I'm also of the belief that, listen, this is far fetched, but I think every creature on the earth was once humanoid, and it either devolved into whatever it is or something happened. I just think that, I just believe that. I believe dogs at one point were actually humans. By the castles, what do you mean by the castles? Go back to what I said and remind me. Because okay, so we know that there are some dogs who can talk to you. We know that there's some dang cats who can talk to you now. Cats are very intelligent. We also know that there's birds that talk to us. Hell, you can get underwater sea creatures that talk to us now. It's just crazy. Freaking dolphins talk to you all the time. There are, listen, by the castles in Germany and statues. What about the castles? They got a lot of those statues like that in Germany, Tone. Statues like what? Remind me again. I've been to Germany. I used to live there, and I've seen plenty of castles. There's a lot of castles. But listen, even in the Bible days, which is only 2,000 years ago, people have seen angels on a regular. If somebody sees an angel now, it's this huge big deal. It wasn't a big deal back then. It wasn't a big deal. People saw angels all the time. Of the mermaids and lizards. Like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the statues of the mermaids and lizard. Yeah. Well, the it wasn't the mermaids. It was the like I said, the lizard people that were mating with women, and there are statues of them. Yes. So I know it sounds far fetched, but you guys can look up these statues, and they're. I mean, you can look right at them. They're very real, and they're clear representation of what used to be. And when you look at what the woman has on, she isn't running around in loincloth. This woman has on a fully knitted, like regular. She looked like the outfit she had on was kind of like Genelesky's Milkmaid. If you ever seen the picture that Genelesky had painted of the Milkmaid, it's a very famous painting, but it looked like something in the 1700s. That's what it looked like. That's not that long ago. And and I'm like, well, wait a minute. If you have something that was 200 years ago, then there's no record of any war that these things, we wiped these things out or they died off. Then, yeah, the castles are huge. Then there's no doubt in my mind that this creature still exists. There is a man who has the body of a snake still out there, and he's not by himself. When you look at the story of is it Jason and the Argonauts, or is it Perseus, where he killed Medusa? When you look at the story of Medusa, Zeus wanted to was it Zeus? It wasn't Zeus, it was the god of the water wanted to mate with her, or it might have been Zeus. One of them wanted to mate with her, and the wife, you know, the woman was calling out to the wife of this god, and the wife was just disgusted. So she made this woman look like a gorgon with a head full of snakes, and and a body of a woman until the torso, and then the rest of the body was a snake. For one, when you look at that story, you know and you go, okay, this was, during the Greek and Roman times, yada, yada, yada. Well, when you look at the story of Medusa, you have to understand that Medusa, for one, was not by herself. She had three sisters. They were Gorgons. It wasn't a Gorgon, it was Gorgons. All of her sisters were Gorgons. They were all turned into these type of creatures. And when you start really looking at it, and then you look at the depictions that are etched in stone that we can walk up and touch today, we're going, well, this whole thing with Jason and the Argonauts and all these stories they're not too far-fetched, because we're looking at somebody who could easily pass as a Gorgon. What's to say that this isn't true? When you look at the island of Crete, and you look at the king of Crete, and at the time, when you look at Daedalus, who killed the king of Crete by boiled him to death, is how he killed him. And the king was called Minos. It was King Minos. Well, King Minos, he what he did was, I forgot how the story went, but nonetheless, he had his wife was cursed or something, and they had a baby, and the baby was half human, half cow. So he took it, and instead of killing it, he put it in the labyrinth. And when he put it in the labyrinth, he would feed it male and female virgins. So they would take these male and female virgins and put them in the labyrinth and close the door. And this aurochs is what they called it, but it's not known as an aurochs. It's known as the Minotaur, or Minotaur is what we know it as. But this half man, half cow would come out and eat these virgins. Now, it sounds like this is 100% BS, until they found out that Daedalus was real, King Minos was real. They found the labyrinth. They found the bones of young people, and then they found the bones of a creature that was half human and half cow. Somebody explain that. We know that the government, for every species that dies out, we know the government creates three more. So it doesn't surprise me to hear about an aurochs, of great strength and size, and angry and eating people, because we found the bones of this creature. Who's to say that there aren't more? Who's to say that there aren't more? I mean, when you look at all these stories, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman, you're talking about a giant who can smell the blood of a regular human being. He said of an Englishman, which means this is around the 16th, 17th century. That's not too long ago. And we're talking about a giant. This is a story of Jack and the Beanstalk. So when you really look at Jack and the Beanstalk and listen to the story, you're going, wait a minute now. The giant that they're talking about, for one, it wasn't one giant. It was a race of giants. And then when you're looking at where these giants were supposed to be in England, what do we have that's in England? We have monoliths that are in England. How did those monoliths get there? You know, there's a pyramid on every continent. What about Stonehenge? Who made that? How's it possible to make Stonehenge? Do you know there's more than one Stonehenge? There's even a Stonehenge that's in the ocean. There's more than one Stonehenge. So when you look at Jack and the Beanstalk, you think it's just a story. No, it's actually the truth. There were giants that were, 12 feet. There's a whole race of them that here in America that were, 7, 8 feet tall. They were redhead giants that are here in America. So we know in England there were giants, 20, 30 feet high. It's some a lot higher than that. The story of Poseidon supposed to be the god of the ocean. They come to find out that there was a giant that was miles high. We know that Devil's Tower is not it's not made of stone. Devil's Tower is actually a what? A tree. Who cut down Devil's Tower? Who cut it down? So I just wanted to talk about that because, listen, staying prayed up is a good idea. But also, we need to know what to be afraid of and what to be aware of. Everybody running around in a hoodie is not your friend. Everybody running around in a hoodie is not your enemy. Sometimes people just wear hoodies. But if we attach a stigma to it, then we're going to be afraid of everyone wearing a hoodie. We're going to call them a hood. Where does that come from? Where does the term hood come from? Do any of you well, there's only one person here. Everybody left. Does anybody know where the term hood comes from? Hoodlum. Where does it come from? Comes from England. Robin Hood of Locksley. Robin got kicked out. Who got kicked out? Robin Hood. Robin the Hood. His name wasn't Robin Hood. He was Robin the Hood. Robin the Hood of Locksley. He was Robin of Locksley. And because he stole from the rich and he wore a so-called hood, now if you wear a hood, people think you're a hoodlum. That's where it comes from. He was a white man. During the reign of King John, who was an idiot. But his brother was a crusader who was King Richard the Lionheart. People hated King John, but they loved King Richard. But King John was king because King Richard left to go on a crusades to Jerusalem to fight against Saladin. And they fought, they won, and then they had to come back. And then King Richard died. So, let's keep our eyes and ears open. Keep our prayer lines open. because I guarantee you that you guys are going to run into the supernatural. Here's the thing, there's more than one side when it comes to the supernatural. Every time you pray, you enter into the supernatural. Every time you listen to music, you enter into the supernatural. Every time you watch a movie, you enter into the supernatural. Every time you turn on music, you enter into the supernatural. Every single time. When you wake up and you turn on your phone, guess what you're doing? You guessed it. You enter into the supernatural. How do we know this? Because if you turn on your phone and you start watching boxing, wrestling, maybe track and field, people who are working out, what's that going to make you want to do? The blackout. It's not going to be a rolling blackout either. What does it make you want to do? It makes you want to exercise. If you, like I used to watch Fight Comp on World Star, but all I could think about is fighting after that. I had to stop watching it because I wanted to fight after that. If you watch porn, what do you want to do? You want to have sex. Meaning there is a spirit behind everything that you do. And this right here is a gateway for that spirit to get into your house. It's also a gateway to kick the spirit out of your house. So if you wake up and you turn on prayer and worship, just turn on praise and worship. You don't even have to turn it up. Just turn it on. Hell, just sleep with praise and worship on. Or pictures of angels. You know what's happening? That spirit is entering in your house. And if there's a negative spirit that's in your house, it will know that the spirit of the Lord has entered into your house. Don't forget, whenever you get saved, you have to ask God into your house, meaning into your body. It's the same thing with any other spirit. There is some kind of way you have to ask that spirit into your house. Now, I'm saying all this to say that some of you are going to be introduced to the paranormal realm pretty soon. Yeah. One way or the other, you're going to enter the paranormal realm. It's going to come for you. And your sword and shield is, of course, your Bible and the Word of God. And no, I'm not trying to act like I'm all holy, especially holier than anyone else. God knows I got issues. However, there's one thing I do know. If I'm spiritually bothered by something, I immediately turn on something that's contrary to that. This computer's on, I turn it on to praise and worship at night or preaching or just the Bible, and I leave it on because I know that spirit is coming into this house. Now, if, okay, so my nieces were here years ago, and they were in this room, and I was in bed. My brother, he was sleeping downstairs on the couch. And they were 12 and 13, and they wanted to use my iPad because I didn't want them touching this. So, I let them use the iPad. I was good night. I go to sleep early. I woke up the next day, breakfast and all that, got them together, and boom, we're all in the car, had a good day, and then they took off because they were heading back to Texas, and I had a nightmare that night, and I woke up in a frenzy because there was a evil spirit in my house. It was a terrible nightmare. And I called them and I said, well, what had happened was I was wondering why I had the nightmare. So I checked my iPad and my nieces were watching gay porn. So I called them and I was like, which one of you is watching gay porn? And they tried to blame it on each other. And I said, don't do this. Do not do this. I just had a nightmare because this demon entered in my house. And it's because of what you guys are watching. So what did I have to do? I had to turn on the gospel to make this being uncomfortable. Yeah, I had to do it. I'd go down in my basement. I would be, feel that this creature was there. So I had to take my iPad. I would take it downstairs, turn on praise and worship that runs for hours, and I'd leave it down there all night. And I kept doing it and kept doing it until I felt this thing was gone. It doesn't want to be around praise and worship. When I feel that something is here and I don't want it to be here, I turn on praise and worship. Demons hate praise and worship. One time I was reading this book. I'm not going to tell you what the title of it was, but it was a magazine and I liked it because the comics were great. It was a comic book, but it had sexual innuendos in it. And it also had, this whole thing with hell and this whole story about going to hell and creatures in hell and this whole story. And it was fascinating story. Plus the other stories in it were just great. I was like, the artwork's great. These stories are great. But this particular story nerved me. And anyway, so I left, I fell asleep and I was living here. I fell asleep and I left it on my my dresser, fell asleep, entered into a dream where I woke up in my bedroom and I looked at my mirror and there was a demon looking in my mirror, looking around my room. And all I could see was his head. Had a head, his whole head was red, pointy ears and everything, and it was looking around my room. I woke up, I grabbed that book, I took it outside of my house and threw it in the trash immediately. I knew exactly what happened. I brought that book in my house and something was attached to it. Period. Dot. That's it and that's all. It was that book. And as soon as I did that, boom. And then, of course, I had to, bless my house. I had to, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. I had to play praise and worship. I had to sleep with the light on. And I still had troubles, but I never seen that particular thing again. Even a video game I used to play. World of Warcraft. I used to play it all the time. It looks like everybody's left. Ooh. Everybody's gone. Cool. Tired anyway. Anyways, you guys have a good evening. We'll go ahead and go. Probably not going to go to bed yet. Watch some Nick Fury. Peace, love, and hair grease, you guys.